The guiding framework is about, with, and for. So I won't say too much because we already talked a little bit about that. And for us to think about, when we think about this idea of with, about, and for, let's begin with this idea of the stories that's told in our math classrooms. We know that there's an importance of focusing on word problems and context-based problems. And we think about the homework that you're assigning to your students, the classwork you're doing, or even as a parent, what you're reading at home. Here is one. Oop, I wonder why it's cut in such an odd way. That's interesting. Okay, there it is. It needed a little bit of time to fill up. Here is a common way in which math is often used. We often in class say, here's a story problem to help you better understand math. Okay. And this is not necessarily bad. I remember doing this great problem with my child when she was 4 years old. Grapes are so tactile, and for them to be given the grapes and they can sort it. That physical movement, as we know from the CGI literature, is so important. To be able to sort and to be able to take away, you can physically act this out. There's such power here. However, what I'm going to ask you to consider today is, instead of using context to better understand math, last time I was presenting with a colleague, Nehi, and she said, why don't we just consider how we can use math to better understand histories? So I'll say that again. Instead of trying to use context to better understand math, let's use math as a process to help us better understand the world around us. So as teachers, we keep trying to find context that's relevant to the math. What we're going to practice now is I'm going to give you, and we're going to talk about a history. I want you to name the math. Okay, so it's the opposite. Okay, so I'm going to have you practice that, and that's what we've been doing in my classrooms with students and teachers. I want you to name the math that's apparent as we're learning our history, as we're investigating our world. It's already math rich. Okay. Today, we're going to do the main gist of the lesson is going to be a lesson called WEGA. It's called Math for Liberation and Solidarity. It was a lesson developed by Gloria Gallardos. Gloria, will you say hi in the chat? Gloria is in the room with us. That is why Gloria, this lesson centers on her. She's a teacher at Vibrant Minds Academy in Anaheim, California. Gloria developed this lesson 3 years ago when she was my student in my math methods course. And it was developed exactly at this time in November 3 years ago. We're not going to go through the whole unit, but I'm going to show you a series of images she had selected to tell you the history. Similar to what I have my students and teachers do, I want us to train our minds to find the math. Math is all around us. We use it daily. So as I share the history, I want you to be prepared to tell me what the math will be later on, okay? So first of all, what comes to mind when you think of labor rights? Who comes to mind? Will you put in the chat, who comes to mind for you? When you think about labor rights, who comes to mind? Oh, I love that. Cesar Chavez, my grandmother, UFW, farm workers. Dolores Huerta. Yes, that woman is fiery. I had a chance to meet her. Amazing human. Unfair practices. Thank you. I usually don't start with this video. We usually end with it. I'm going to start with this video today because it's a son telling the story for their father. So I wanted to start with it because it's a dedication to Gloria and also dedication to my father in this room, that I think about him as I was planning for today. We'll just play for a minute of it.
He was true to his word. He spoke at least 12 different languages. He was a great communicator. Being a great communicator made him a great leader. When he came to America, he wanted to learn more about the laws. He spent his time when he was not working in court. So when I go and speak and I see some of these elders, and come up to me with such honor and respect for my father. It's such a struggle not to, like right now, bring tears to my eyes, to know that they loved him so much. And I'm not just talking Filipinos, I'm talking every culture, you know, that he helped at some point in time. What he did care about is that people were treated like human beings. He passed away not knowing how much he really did. October 25th is Lariat Leon Day in the county of Los Angeles. We celebrate Lariat Leon Day because he is one of our Filipino-American heroes. Like many Asian groups, our history has been pushed aside, largely ignored. We'll continue to fight against this non-reporting of our Filipino-American history. If my father was here today, he would still in the struggle to help people. My name is Johnny Itleon, and I'm the son of Larry Dulay Itleon.
Let me go back to share screen. Hopefully is it big enough for you all? Is it okay? I know my adjustment skills in sharing, so that means I can show slides so that, okay, much better for you all. So I'm going to share with you a series of images developed by Gloria. I started with this video because I think, and I chose this lesson in particular because it's Hispanic Heritage Month and it's also Filipino-American Heritage Month. I'm sorry, Filipino-American History Month. And growing up, I had never learned about Larry Itliang. Our Filipino Americans, next to English and Spanish, Tagalog is the most common language spoken in the state of California. Filipinos are the largest, most populated Asian American group in California. Larry Lian was a Filipino American labor organizer and a civil rights leader. He led the Delano grape strike and formed in partnership with Cesar Chavez. Let me show you a few images developed and shared by Gloria. And I want you to think, as I'm sharing with you the history, at your grade level, where might the math be to help you understand the history better? Okay, where does the math naturally come to play? Oops, sorry, clicking issue. Okay, so after the Spanish-American War ended in 1898, the United States took possession of the Philippines. I did not know that as a child, making it an American territory. In 1899, after fighting for independence from Spain, the Filipinos waged a war for independence against the United States. The Philippine-American War ended in 1902, and then the Philippine Independence Act was established with a 10-year transition period that went from 1935 to 1945, which it paved the way for the Philippines to become an independent independent country. And from that period of 1900 and 1934, the Philippines began immigrating to the California Central Valley, where there was a high demand for field laborers. The Filipino immigrants, which we call the Pinoys, they worked in the fields of San Joaquin Valley, the Salinas, and Sacramento. Okay. So without labor unions, migrant farm workers weren't protected under existing labor laws. Living and working conditions were harsh and exploitive, long hours, low wages. Are there questions that you're starting to have? There were no regulations around child labor, lack of workers' rights such as pensions and healthcare, really crowded living conditions and no functioning toilets were common. So in September 1965, Larry Itliang, a labor leader and co-founder of the Agriculture Workers Organizing Committee, inspired Filipino farm workers in Delano, California, to vote to go on strike against the great farm owners. The next day, the Delano grape strike began with more than 2,000 Filipino farm workers marching off the vineyards, knowing that they would not receive payment when they striked. They were being paid $1.25 and they were demanding $1.40 an hour. Okay. And the right to form a union. Larry Itliang knew that there needs to be a union between the Filipino farm workers and the Mexican-American farm workers to join the strike, or what would happen would be that the farm owners would put one against the other to break the strike as strike breakers. So Larry Itliang approached Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez to form a collective group. Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez took Itliang's request back to the National Farm Workers Association, and they spoke to nearly 1,000 NFWA members. In a unanimous vote, the Mexican-American farm workers decided to join the Filipinos. So they joined us, and together, a year later, they formed UFW. That is the formation of UFW. It was a coalition to come and protest for the Delano grape strike that took place for actually 5 years. So over the course of 5 years, the strike garnered international recognition and was supported by major celebrities, politicians of the time, and people were donating money across the country. Because imagine going on strike for 5 years without pay. And they led to a table grape boycott that lasted across the country and to other countries. In 1970, more than 30 Delano grape growers in Delano agreed to pay an increase for the workers, as well as medical insurance plan and an established control of toxic pesticides. And Itliang even negotiated that a percentage of each grape box be picked, that each grape box, part of that percentage goes to support the retirement facility of retired farm workers. I thought that was lovely, this idea that he cared not just about himself, but about those who have retired. The Delano grape strike inspired people around the nation in Europe to join and support. It later led to the passage of the California Agriculture Labor Relations Act, providing collective bargaining power for farm workers statewide. Look at how it took place across the country. Look at these images. And here's some of the data around hourly wages and its change in time. And also the racial ethnic background of our farm workers along the Pacific coast. So I'm going to pause here. When Gloria created the lesson, was a multi-day lesson. It wasn't like a 10-minute thing like what you experienced. As teachers and what I ask my students as well in K through 12 spaces, I want them to start thinking about, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Because what you're wondering is that you start looking at data. So what are you noticing and what are you wondering?